Hey everyone. Welcome to AfriHeart Stories, your go-to spot for African tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe and drop a comment. Now sit back and enjoy. The living room clock ticked too loud for a Saturday. The stew Chioma had made simmered in the kitchen, its aroma floating in the air, waiting to be appreciated. The television was off. The house quiet. Chioma sat on the edge of the couch, hands resting on her lap, dressed simply in a wrapper and t-shirt, her natural hair pulled back. The quiet wasn't peaceful, it was tense. She'd been waiting for him. The front door slammed open. Kenneth entered, his designer shoes leaving a trail of dust across the polished tiles. His jacket was already off, flung lazily onto a chair. His face was tight with stress, jaw clenched. "Good evening," Chioma said softly. "Evening," he muttered, not looking at her. He walked straight to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water and downed it in one long gulp. Then, almost like an afterthought, he turned to her. "I don't understand this marriage anymore," he said suddenly. Chioma's brows furrowed. "What happened?" Kenneth scoffed. "What happened?" "You happened, Chioma." She blinked, confused. "You sit at home all day. Doing what? Watching TV? Gossiping with your mother on the phone? I go out every day, I deal with pressure, with clients, with deadlines, while you're here just lazy." Chioma sat straighter, heart pounding. "Lazy? Yes." Kenneth exploded. "I work. I pay the bills. I do everything. You just sit here eating and cooking. That's not contribution. That's convenience." A silence fell like a slap. She stared at him, searching his face for any trace of the man she married. The one who had once begged her to quit her job when he went for his MBA so she could hold the home together. The one who promised he'd carry them both once he finished. She gave up her dreams for him. Her job. Her pension. Her career as a textile designer. All gone. "You asked me to stay home, Kenneth," she said quietly. "That was before I realized it would make you complacent. You don't even try. You're just there." Chioma swallowed hard. The stew on the stove now smelled sour. Something inside her chest tightened, but she didn't cry. Kenneth rubbed his temples. "Forget it. I've had a rough day." "No," she said, standing. Her voice was calm. "You had a rough day and you decided I was your target." He stared at her, momentarily caught off guard. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I'm not your punching bag, Kenneth. I'm your wife." He laughed bitterly. "Then start acting like one." She didn't reply. Instead, she walked past him to the kitchen. Turn off the stove. The stew was perfect. She had even baked plantain the way he liked it, crispy edges, soft center. She plated the food and carried it to the dining table. Dinner was ready. But Kenneth didn't follow. He remained on the couch, scrolling on his phone, occasionally shaking his head. She sat at the table alone, staring at the meal meant for two. A memory flashed through her mind. The day he got his first job at Zenith Bank, how they celebrated with suya and cheap wine in their tiny apartment. She remembered hugging him, whispering, "We made it." Now he barely noticed her. Chioma picked up her fork, but her appetite was gone. After cleaning the dishes, she tiptoed into the room they once shared with laughter and late-night stories. She sat at the foot of the bed. Her hands trembled. She opened her bedside drawer. Inside was an old sketchpad. Tattered and stained with age, it still held the last piece she drew, a wedding gown sketched in ink. Her handwriting at the corner read, "Chioma Creations, Grace, Elegance, Identity." A tear slid down her cheek. She thought she had let that part of herself die. Until tonight. She closed the book gently and placed it beside her. For the first time in a long time, something stirred in her chest. Not anger. Not sadness. But purpose. Round pushpin scene shift. Later that night, Kenneth snored softly on his side of the bed, dead to the world. His back turned. Chioma lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling. "You're just lazy." The words played over and over like a broken record. But now they didn't sting. They sparked. She reached over and picked up her sketchpad again. She turned to a fresh page. Picked up a pencil. Her hands moved slowly at first, rusty with time. But as the lines formed, her confidence returned. She drew a flared gown. Then a fitted blouse. Her heart quickened. One design. 2, 3. She didn't sleep that night. When the morning came, Kenneth left for work without a word. Chioma stood at the window watching him reverse the car. For the first time she didn't feel small watching him go. She looked at her sketches again. This time she smiled. The smell of egusi soup hung in the air, thick with spice and memory. Chioma set the table for two, placing a neatly folded napkin by Kenneth's side as always. The plates were spotless, the food steaming. Everything looked perfect. Except the silence. Kenneth entered the house with his usual sigh, dropped his laptop bag by the sofa, and walked straight into the kitchen. "Dinner's ready," Chioma said, her voice light. He muttered, opening the fridge for a bottle of malt instead of heading to the table. She followed him, wiped her hands with a kitchen towel and tried to smile. "You like the beef tender, right? I used the stock you." "I'm not that hungry," he interrupted, cracking the bottle cap and taking a long drink. Chioma stood frozen. He hadn't even looked at the food. "Kenneth," she said softly, "we haven't had dinner together in weeks." He shrugged. "Busy. You weren't always busy. That was before life got real." She stood silently for a beat too long, her hands curling around the edge of the countertop. "I work too, Kenneth," she said finally. He turned to her with a smirk. "Doing what exactly? Cooking? Cleaning? You call that work?" Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Kenneth waved his hand dismissively and walked away, gulping the rest of his drink as he disappeared into the bedroom. Chioma stood there numb. The stew on the table now felt cold. She slowly sat down and began to eat, alone, chewing mechanically, eyes fixed on the flickering candle. The silence wasn't just in the house. It was inside her. After dinner, she washed the dishes without thinking. Her mind was on fire. The house felt too clean, too organized. It was the same routine every day. She was living but not alive. She peeked into the bedroom. Kenneth was already half asleep, still in his work shirt, the TV remote in hand. Back in their shared closet, Chioma reached for an old shoebox. Inside were her certificates, first class in textile design, internship letters, awards she once received. She pulled one out, rubbed her thumb over her name printed in gold foil. Chioma, and woke. Before she became just Kenneth's wife. That night she didn't sleep. Instead, she opened her sketchbook again. And drew until dawn. The attic was dusty, cramped, and suffocating. But Chioma needed to find that box. She had remembered it vaguely, one Kenneth had helped her pack when they first moved in. It held her old portfolio, sketching tools, and unused fabrics. It had once been her hope chest. Her hands trembled as she opened the faded brown box, sneezing from the dust. Inside were rolls of encre, pieces of lace, charcoal pencils, and designs drawn on old A3 papers. Her eyes widened as she pulled them out, dresses she had once dreamed would walk Lagos Fashion Week. Blouses with bold cuts. Skirts inspired by her mother's 70s style. Each piece felt like a whisper from her past life. She sat on the floor, legs folded beneath her, and began spreading the sheets out like a quilt of forgotten ambition. Her fingers traced each line, some sharp, some rushed, all filled with heart. Her favorite was still there, the Grace gown, inspired by her mother. She smiled. The curves were imperfect, the lace pattern outdated, but it carried a piece of her soul. From the hallway below, Kenneth's voice echoed on a phone call. "Bro, these women don't want to do anything anymore. Just sit at home and eat your money." Chioma flinched. Tears pricked her eyes. But she didn't let them fall. Instead, she picked up a pencil and began refining the Grace gown design, tightening the hemline, modernizing the sleeve. Her hands moved with purpose. Downstairs, Kenneth's laughter rose. But upstairs, Chioma's dreams were waking. It had been years since Chioma last spoke to Adiz, her closest friend from university, the one who once called her, the next Diola Sego. Chioma hesitated before dialing. Adiz answered on the second ring, her voice bursting with excitement. Chioma woke. Or should I say Madame Okoro? Is this a ghost or what? Chioma laughed nervously. It's me. I don't know. I found your card while cleaning. I almost died when I saw your name pop up. My friend, where have you been hiding all this glory? Chioma paused. Nowhere. I guess I've been asleep. Adiz's tone shifted. Chi, talk to me. Are you okay? Chioma sighed. I don't know. My husband says I'm lazy. A beat of silence. Lazy? Chioma, you designed our department's graduation robe from scratch. Chioma chuckled sadly. That feels like another life. It doesn't have to be. What happened to your dreams? I gave them up, Chioma admitted, voice cracking. For marriage. For him. Adiz's voice turned firm. Well, guess what? Dreams don't expire. They just hibernate. Come by my studio this week. I have an extra sewing machine and an idea. Chioma wiped a tear. Are you sure? I'm not offering. I'm insisting. They both laughed. After hanging up, Chioma stared at her sketchbook. For the first time in years, Someone had reminded her she wasn't crazy. She wasn't lazy. She was just buried. And she was about to rise. Chioma sat at her desk, once meant for grocery budgeting and jotting down shopping lists. But today it was her planning station. She logged into the laptop Adiz had given her on loan and opened an incognito tab. Open business savings account, she typed. She hesitated. What would Kenneth say if he knew? She didn't care. She created the account under the name CG Designs, short for Chioma Gold. Then she pulled out her sketchpad and matched it with available fabric swatches Adiz had sent. At night, while Kenneth snored beside her, she quietly tiptoed to the living room and worked by the dim glow of the side lamp. She had learned to sew with limited tools, turning scraps into beauty. Her first dress, a yellow flared gown, was stitched over 3 nights. She uploaded it anonymously to a local fashion site. 2 days later an order came in. 12,000 Nigerian nairas. Chioma stared at the notification on her phone. Her hands trembled. She wasn't just dreaming anymore. She was selling. And for the first time in a long time she felt alive. When Kenneth asked why she looked so happy, she smiled and said, "Maybe I'm just well rested." But inside she was building. In silence. Chioma stared at the 12,000 Nigerian nairas alert like it was a million. She reread the name on the order, Ijeoma L. A complete stranger. Someone had seen her work and believed it was worth paying for. She dropped the phone slowly, her heart racing. She stood, walked to the mirror and stared at herself. Her hair was wrapped in a scarf, her wrapper was stained with stew, but her eyes had light again. Downstairs, Kenneth sat at the dining table, scrolling through his phone as he ate the okra soup she'd made. His eyes didn't leave the screen once. Chioma placed a cup of cold water beside him. "How was work?" He shrugged. "Stressful. Some new compliance memo. I'm tired." She nodded. "I know the feeling." He glanced at her. "Tired from what?" She smiled faintly. "From sewing." "Sewing?" Chioma blinked. "Cooking," she corrected quickly. "Slicing okra takes time." Kenneth snorted and went back to his phone. "Right. My mother used to make okra soup in 15 minutes flat." Chioma picked at her fingers beneath the table. Maybe she had help. Or maybe she wasn't lazy. The word hit like a slap, but Chioma didn't react. She stood and walked away. Later that night, she packed the yellow gown into a brown parcel. She sealed it with her hands trembling from excitement. She walked quietly to the main gate where the dispatch rider waited. He smiled. "Madam CG?" She nodded, handing over the package. "Please handle it with care." As he rode off, Chioma whispered to herself, "God multiply this." She didn't know how, but she felt this was only the beginning. Kenneth was unusually warm that Saturday morning. "My boss is throwing a small get-together tonight. You should come," he said, adjusting his cufflinks in the mirror. "Wear something nice." Chioma looked up from the scarf she was ironing. "Me?" "Yes, you. You're still my wife, aren't you?" It wasn't a compliment, but she accepted. She hadn't attended any of Kenneth's work functions in years. That evening she wore a simple black dress she had designed herself, modest, with elegant lace around the collar. She paired it with silver flats. Kenneth barely looked at her. "At least you don't look like a housemaid tonight." They arrived at the Lecky apartment, greeted by jazz music and wine glasses clinking. Kenneth slipped into conversations with ease. Chioma stood awkwardly near a balcony, nursing a cup of fruit juice. A woman approached her. "You must be Kenneth's wife." Chioma smiled. "Yes, I'm Chioma. I'm Tanya. We've heard so much about you." Chioma's smile faltered. "Really?" "Yes," Tanya laughed. "Kenneth always says you're on a full-time vacation." Before Chioma could respond, Kenneth joined them with a laugh. "She is the queen of rest." People around chuckled. One man said, You better employ her. Too fine to just be eating and sleeping." Chioma's ears burned. Her chest tightened. But she smiled. She said nothing. When Kenneth returned to his group, Tanya leaned in. "Between us girls, you should make him sweat a little. Can't let these men think you're furniture." Chioma blinked slowly. That night she didn't cry. She sewed. "Mama," Chioma said, wrapping her scarf tighter against the afternoon breeze. "Can I sleep over tonight?" Mama Grace opened the gate and ushered her in. "Of course, my daughter. Is everything okay?" Chioma hugged her. "I just needed air." Inside the small bungalow where Chioma grew up, the walls held memories. The living room still smelled of shea butter and old hymnals. As Mama stirred vegetable soup in the kitchen, Chioma finally spoke. "Mama, If I told you Kenneth called me lazy, what would you say? Mama Spoon paused midair. She turned. I would say Kenneth is blind. Chioma swallowed. I gave up my career for him. Mama sat beside her and placed a firm hand over hers. Chioma, listen. A man can forget what you gave. But God does not. If the world calls you lazy, prove it wrong, with results, not words. I feel like I'm starting too late. You're not late. You're just in season. Some flowers bloom at dawn, others at dusk. But they all bloom. Chioma felt a tear slip down her cheek. Mama, I sold my first dress. Mama's face lit up. Ah, God is beginning. Don't stop, Chioma. Don't shrink. Chioma exhaled deeply. That night, she slept in her childhood room, sketchbook beside her. And dreams once again began to stir. Orders started coming in faster than Chioma expected. She set up a workspace in the spare bedroom, no longer used for guests, and turned it into her mini studio. She hired a young girl from the next street, Iridi, to help with stitching after school. Iridi's eyes widened when she saw the patterns. Auntie Chioma, you made all these? Yes. You're better than some people on Instagram. Chioma laughed. Let's keep that between us for now. Every morning after Kenneth left, Chioma worked. Every night after he fell asleep, she continued. One day she received a custom order for 6 bridal train dresses. 90,000 Nigerian nairas. She reinvested it all, bought better fabric, upgraded her sewing machine, and even ordered woven labels. Chioma Gold. Her confidence grew. She designed a lookbook PDF and emailed it to a few small boutiques using a new business email. Days later, Adiz forwarded her a contact. He's looking for new designers, Adiz wrote. Call him. Chioma saved the name, Mr. Rince. But she didn't call. Not yet. She wanted to be ready. At home, Kenneth remained oblivious, still coming home tired, still ignoring her food, still muttering about the economy. One night, she brought him a plate of yam porridge. He pushed it aside. Chioma, he sighed, some days I wonder what you even do all day. She looked at him and smiled. Maybe one day, you'll find out. You're really doing this, Adiz said, arms folded, a proud smile on her face. Chioma nodded. The space was small, just a corner in Adiz's larger boutique, but it was hers. She hung 3 mannequins dressed in her designs, printed flyers, and placed a simple gold nameplate at the entrance. Chioma Gold. Opening day was quiet, just a few customers trickled in, mostly friends of Adiz. But one woman asked to try a dress. Chioma held her breath as the woman stepped out of the changing room. This fits like it was made for me, she said, spinning. She bought 2 gowns. Chioma wanted to cry. She stayed late that night, rearranging the space, polishing the shelves. As she stepped outside to lock up, she caught her reflection in the boutique's glass. She didn't look like just a wife anymore. She looked like a woman building something. At home, Kenneth was already in bed. He didn't ask where she'd been. Chioma kissed her own hand goodnight and slept with her dreams beside her. 2 weeks after opening her boutique corner, Chioma arrived early, humming as she adjusted a sleeve on the display mannequin. Her customer base was slowly growing, bridesmaids, career women, and churchgoers all starting to notice her designs. That morning, a quiet, older man walked in. He wore a beige kaftan, glasses perched on his nose, and moved with the grace of someone unhurried by time. Good morning, Chioma greeted with a warm smile. Good morning, he said, looking around. I was walking past and saw that gown in the window. Do you design these? Yes, I do. He approached a soft pink midi dress and ran his fingers along the seam. Stitching is tight. Fabric breathes. You have an eye for detail. Thank you. I'm a Rins, he said. I'm planning my daughter's wedding. She's stubborn, very stylish. I think she'd love your work. Chioma's heart skipped. You'd like me to design for her? If you can handle it, he said, smiling gently. 6 outfits. 1 for her traditional wedding, 1 for her reception, and the rest for events. I'm willing to pay well if you deliver. Chioma didn't blink. I'll deliver, sir. He handed her a business card. Send me your proposal by Monday. I'll send you her sizes. You have 1 shot. After he left, Chioma collapsed onto the couch. This was it. Her moment. Later that night, she sat at her desk and began sketching furiously. Kenneth, walking past to grab water, glanced at her drawings and scoffed. Still playing tailor? Chioma didn't reply. She was too busy creating legacy. Kenneth slammed the door shut harder than usual. Chioma looked up from her sewing machine. Babe, she called gently. He didn't respond. Just went straight to the fridge, opened it, then slammed it shut again. Where's the malt? I didn't restock. Sorry. I've been busy with your little sewing hobby, he snapped. Chioma stayed calm. I've had a long day too. He turned on her. You have no idea what a real long day feels like. I was let go today, Chioma. After 5 years. They didn't even blink. Chioma's breath caught. Kenneth, I'm sorry. I'm not in the mood for pity. Don't pretend to understand. You've never worked a real job. Her lips parted, but she shut them again. He stormed off into the room, slamming the door. Chioma stood frozen. The words stung. But more than that, he was crumbling. And he didn't know she had built something while he dismissed her. That night, she quietly cooked his favorite meal, oxtail stew and yam porridge, and placed it on the table. He didn't touch it. Chioma went back to work, wiping her eyes silently. She had promised herself not to shrink again. It happened by accident. Chioma had just finished packaging dresses for Mr. Arin's daughter when Kenneth barged in, holding a fashion magazine. He slammed it onto the table. What is this? She turned slowly. Her boutique's name, Chioma Gold, was in bold on the cover. I didn't know they'd feature me. One of the clients submitted a testimonial, she explained. You've been running a whole business behind my back? Chioma stood tall. I wasn't hiding. You just never asked. He stared at her, mouth slightly open. You were using my light, my fuel, my house. I used my hands, my mind, my silence, and your absence. Kenneth's eyes narrowed. So this is what you've been doing while I was slaving away? Chioma stepped closer. I never asked you to slave for me. I supported you when you had nothing. I gave up everything so you could build. Now that I'm building, you want to burn it down? His voice lowered. You didn't tell me. Would you have listened? Silence. Chioma exhaled. This is my purpose, Kenneth. I won't dim it again. He walked out. For once, Chioma didn't follow. Kenneth hadn't spoken to her in 3 days. He stayed locked in the room, only coming out to eat, still jobless and bitter. One evening, he placed a bouquet of wilting roses on the dining table. I guess I should say congratulations, he said with a stiff smile. Chioma Gold. Fancy. Chioma raised an eyebrow. Thank you. But let's not pretend you did this alone, he added. You used my power. My Wi-Fi. This roof. Chioma's face was calm. And how much did you pay for my years of sacrifice? For the dreams I buried? For the love I poured out? Kenneth chuckled. You're full of yourself now. No, she replied. I'm just finally full. Of confidence. Of worth. Of identity. He leaned closer. Don't forget you're still my wife. She leaned in too. Don't forget I was your backbone, when you thought I was your furniture. The room grew cold. Kenneth left without a word. Chioma sat at the table, running a hand over the bouquet. They weren't roses. They were proof that regret had no fragrance. Chioma stood in front of a camera, lights beaming as the reporter from Lagos Fashion Spotlight smiled. Chioma Gold has become a household name for classic African elegance, the reporter said. What inspired your brand? Chioma smiled. Silence, doubt, and rediscovery. The interview aired that weekend. At home, Kenneth watched it in the living room, flipping through channels when her face appeared. He stared, stunned, as she gracefully told her story. I started with nothing. Just pain and thread. Now I create clothes that speak confidence into women. The host clapped. You're an inspiration. He watched as customers tagged her in pictures online, calling her designs transformative. Later that evening, Chioma came home to see Kenneth standing quietly in the kitchen. I saw your interview, he said. She nodded, removing her earrings. And? He was quiet for a moment. You've changed? Chioma looked him in the eye. No, Kenneth. I just stopped begging for permission to shine. He nodded slowly, defeated. That night, she turned off her phone, sipped tea, and listened to jazz. She no longer needed his praise. The world had found her. It was a sunny Wednesday when Kenneth showed up at her boutique. Chioma was in the middle of fitting a bride into a corset-style gown. Her hands moved deftly, adjusting the fabric, when she saw his reflection in the mirror, standing in the doorway holding a bouquet of red roses. Can I help you? She asked without turning fully. The bride glanced awkwardly between them. Kenneth cleared his throat. Can we talk? Chioma nodded to Iridi. Please assist the bride with the hemline. I'll be right outside. They stepped onto the pavement beside the boutique. I saw your article in Fashion Insider, Kenneth began. Your work is all over the place. It's impressive. Chioma folded her arms. Thank you. He extended the roses. I got these for you. She didn't take them. Kenneth lowered them slowly. I was wrong, Chioma. About everything. I was stressed, bitter. I didn't see you. She studied him. Are you here to apologize, or to reclaim what you think you lost? What? She stepped forward. I became everything you said I wasn't. And now that you're no longer in control, you come bearing flowers? Kenneth looked hurt. I'm trying to make it right. Chioma shook her head. No, Kenneth. You're trying to ease your guilt. He stared at her in disbelief. You once said I was just resting on your dime, she added. Now I fund myself and you're uncomfortable. That's not true. Then why are you here with roses but not respect? He lowered his eyes. I miss us. Chioma looked past him. I miss who I was before I shrank for you. She walked back inside, leaving him standing in the heat, still holding the bouquet. The hall buzzed with energy, the air thick with perfume and anticipation. Chioma stood backstage at the Lagos Women's Empowerment Gala, adjusting the final piece of her showcase, a stunning green ochre gown with a dramatic flair and golden beadwork. Her logo, Chioma Gold, was projected on the screen behind the runway. Adiz squeezed her hand. You ready? Chioma exhaled. More than ever. She peeked from behind the curtain. Kenneth sat 3 rows from the front. His former bank colleagues surrounded him, unaware that he was the husband of tonight's headliner. The music started. Her first model stepped onto the runway. Applause. Then the second. Gasp. By the time the third model, dressed in Chioma's reimagined grace gown, walked, the entire hall was on their feet. Chioma's eyes welled up. As the final model exited, the MC stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the woman redefining African elegance, Chioma Okoro. She walked out slowly, wearing one of her own pieces, a regal black jumpsuit with gold embroidery shaped like rising flames. The room erupted. She spotted Kenneth. He was standing, stunned, hands clapping slowly, eyes wide with disbelief. Backstage, the models embraced her. Adiz whispered, You just stole the city. Chioma smiled. No, I reclaimed myself. Later, in the hallway, Kenneth approached her, hesitating. Chioma, he said, voice low. That was incredible. She nodded. Thank you. I don't know this version of you, he admitted. She turned toward him, bold and calm. That's because this version never needed your permission to exist. And she walked away, toward the press, toward new clients, toward her future. The boutique on Victoria Island was twice the size of her old corner. Fresh white walls, wide glass windows, mannequins dressed in elegance, and her name in gold lettering above the entrance. Chioma Gold, by design, by destiny. A crowd gathered for the launch. Influencers, clients, designers, even a commissioner's wife showed up in a gown Chioma had made. Inside, the air was electric with excitement. Chioma stood near the register, smiling warmly at a little girl twirling in one of her ready-to-wear dresses. I want to be like you, the girl whispered. Chioma knelt beside her. Then promise me you'll never believe anyone who says you're not enough. The girl nodded seriously. Outside, Adiz pulled her aside. International orders came in from Canada and the UK, she said. Your new collection is trending. Chioma couldn't believe it. Her dreams had traveled farther than she had ever imagined. Back at home that night, the house was quiet. She had moved into a serene 2-bedroom apartment, not large but hers. Fully funded by her work. No judgments, no shadows. She brewed her favorite tea, sat by the window and stared at the night sky. No TV blaring. No slamming doors. Just silence. Peaceful this time. She reached for her journal and wrote. He once called me lazy. But laziness never built empires. Silence was never weakness. And love never meant forgetting myself. She closed the book. She didn't feel lonely. She felt whole. The knock on the door came just after 9 p.m. Chioma had just finished packing an international shipment, 3 high-end bridal gowns, carefully folded and sealed. She rubbed her neck and walked barefoot to the door, her silk wrapper sweeping against the tiles. She opened it slowly. Kenneth stood there. Rain drenched his blazer, his shoes soaked, eyes bloodshot, not from alcohol but something deeper. Regret. Hi, he said. Chioma stepped aside silently, gesturing for him to come in. He didn't move. Instead, he slowly sank to his knees in the hallway right there in front of her door. His hands dropped to his thighs, eyes lowered. I was wrong, he whispered. The world fell still. Chioma didn't speak. She stood at the threshold, arms crossed, robe tied tight, heart steady. I was wrong about you, Kenneth said again, his voice hoarse. About everything. The way I treated you. The words I said. How I mocked you in front of others. I called you lazy. He finally looked up. But you're the most hard-working person I've ever met. Chioma swallowed hard. Kenneth continued. I saw your feature in Women Who Build. I saw how they celebrated you. I heard how the commissioner's wife mentioned you in a live interview. And I realized, I was married to gold, but I treated it like dust. Chioma shifted slightly, her eyes never leaving his. You once asked me if I was here to apologize or to reclaim what I lost, he said. Back then I didn't understand. But now, I know you were never mine to own. You were a gift I disrespected. Rain continued to fall behind him, softening the world to a blur of sound and shadows. I lost my job. I lost my peace. But I don't want to lose the one thing that ever believed in me, even when I gave her nothing to hold on to. Chioma's voice was soft but steady. So what do you want, Kenneth? He exhaled slowly. I don't want your business. I don't want your money. I just want a chance to say sorry properly. Not with flowers. Not with pride. Just this. He spread his palms. Just me. Flawed. Real. Chioma looked at him for a long time. The man kneeling now wasn't the same arrogant banker who used to fling insults with every frustration. This one had lost weight. His eyes had aged. His tone had dropped its superiority. He was finally broken. She stepped outside and knelt slowly in front of him, eye to eye. I believed in you when you had nothing, she said. And I believed in us when there was no us left. I wanted to be your partner, Kenneth. Not your shadow. He nodded quickly. I know. I was blind. Chioma continued. I found myself in silence. In pain. In being underestimated. But I don't hate you for it. I thank you. Kenneth looked up, confused. If you hadn't broken me, she whispered, I would have never risen this strong. He blinked. Does that mean, you forgive me? She smiled faintly. Forgiveness isn't the issue. The question is, what do you do with it now? Kenneth's eyes filled with tears. Anything. Everything. She stood slowly and offered him her hand. Come in. Not as a husband returning to his wife, but as a man willing to learn from the woman he once buried. Kenneth took her hand. Inside, the apartment was warm, inviting, filled with the scent of lemon and eucalyptus. Her life was different now. No longer built around him, but built by her. They sat in silence, both staring at the glowing lamp in the corner. I see you now, he said quietly. Chioma nodded. Good. Because I refused to disappear again. Kenneth looked around. You did all this by yourself. No, Chioma corrected gently. I did it with God, with grace, and with a little girl in me who still remembered how to dream. He smiled, sadness lingering at the edge of it. Do you think we could ever start again? She paused. I think we can forgive. And that's a start. Kenneth bowed his head. I'll take whatever part of you you're willing to share again. Chioma picked up her tea and sipped. Then begin by sitting with me, not as someone who needs to be needed, but someone who's learning to appreciate. And for the first time, Kenneth sat in silence. Listening. The sun poured gently through the wide windows of Chioma Gold Studios, casting golden light over rolls of fabric, busy sewing machines, and laughter from the break room. Chioma stood in the center of the main floor, surrounded by her growing staff. It was a Monday morning and she had gathered them for an announcement. She wore a sleek emerald green jumpsuit, elegant, bold, commanding. Her hair was pulled into a high puff, her skin glowing with confidence and poise. Iridi, now a full-time tailor, beamed from the front row. A newer recruit, Zainab, balanced her notepad, eager to take notes. Chioma raised a hand. Before we begin production today, I want to share something personal with you all. The team fell silent. She walked to the center of the room holding a small photo frame. It held a picture of her younger self, grinning in a university studio, covered in fabric scraps, pencil tucked behind her ear. I used to be told I was lazy, Chioma began. Not by strangers, but by someone I loved, someone I built with, someone I trusted. She took a breath. I gave up my job to support his dreams. I cooked. I cleaned. I waited. I bent. I disappeared. Eyes in the room welled up. Some nodded silently. But somewhere in the silence I remembered who I was. I picked up a pencil, then a thread. I stitched pain into purpose. And every time someone doubted me, every lazy they threw, I turned it into design. She turned the photo around, showing the image to her team. This girl, she said, was never lazy. She was waiting for permission she never needed. Applause broke out, soft at first, then thunderous. Chioma smiled but didn't cry. She was past tears. She was building legacy. Later that evening, she hosted a quiet dinner with Mama Grace and Adiz in her home. A minimalist space filled with warm lighting, books, and fabrics. Mama Grace sipped Zobo slowly. "Your father would be proud," she said. "He always said you had fire in you. I just didn't expect it would come out like this." Adiz laughed. "I always knew. You just needed a runway instead of a kitchen." Chioma smiled. "The kitchen taught me discipline. The runway taught me courage." Just then a soft knock came at the door. It was Kenneth. Not dressed in his usual fitted suit, but in a simple shirt and jeans, holding a brown paper bag. "I brought coconut bread. You once said it was your favorite." Chioma didn't move. "I did." He looked past her and greeted her mother and Adiz respectfully. "I'm not staying," he added. "Just wanted to give you this." She took the bag and nodded. "Thank you." He turned to go but then paused. "There's something I want to say before I leave." She waited. "I realized I lost something greater than a job or reputation. I lost the only woman who ever saw me whole, when I couldn't even see myself." Chioma looked him in the eye. "I saw you clearly. You just chose not to see me back." He nodded slowly. "Now I do. And I'm rooting for you. Always." With that he left. No drama. No begging. Just closure. Mama Grace sighed. "He still loves you." Chioma smiled gently. "But I've finally learned to love myself." 2 weeks later, Chioma was invited as the keynote speaker at a youth empowerment event for women in business. The crowd was massive: young ladies, entrepreneurs, students, mothers. Cameras flashed, social media buzzed, but Chioma wasn't there for fame. She walked onto the stage with poise, paused at the podium and looked into the sea of faces. "I was once called lazy," she began. "But today I employ 15 women. I ship dresses to 4 countries. I wake up every morning with purpose, not apology." The crowd erupted in cheers. She continued. "Being a wife didn't make me small. Forgetting who I was did. But I remembered. I fought. I bloomed." She closed her speech with the same words she'd once whispered into her sketchbook. "Every woman is powerful, once she stops asking for permission." That evening, back at her apartment, Chioma sat alone with her tea, overlooking the city from her small balcony. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Kenneth. "Thank you for not letting bitterness define you. Watching you rise taught me what love really looks like." She stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it. She wasn't holding on to old versions of herself anymore. The night air was warm. Somewhere in the city, a young girl might be holding a sketchpad, unsure of her voice. Somewhere else, another woman might be eating dinner alone, doubting her worth. Chioma raised her cup. "To all of us who were once underestimated," she whispered. And sipped. Liked it? Thumbs up, subscribe and join the AfriHeart fam. Your support fuels our stories. Until next time.